No problem at all. Again, hello everybody in Croke Park. Hello all onliners. I'm not sure how much of my introduction you got. I think we'll get started. Chucky is very keen to get going, and I'm very keen to get going. And I'm sure Deirdre, our first speaker, and Brendan are also eager to get started. Can I just, anybody that wants closed captions, remember to click the CC button at the end of your screen if you're not actually seeing them. The most important thing is that the questions are all going to be taken at the end. So I would encourage you all, as you think of the questions at each presentation, because it's going to move very quickly, if you could put your questions into Slido and put presentation 1 and the questions, so that afterwards we can allocate the questions to the speakers. I'm looking forward to the sessions. I know how much fun these were last year. I can't wait to get started. So I'm going to invite our first speakers to get started. Deirdre McHugh and Brendan Smith, and their presentation is called Crowd4Access from the University of Galway Footpath Mapping Initiative, Improving Accessibility Through Collaborating in Citizen Science. And I look forward to hear, well, myself and Chucky are looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So Deirdre, if you'd like to share your slides.
Thank you, Terry.
It'll just take me a minute there to... Oh,
we're good, I think.
it's working.
Yes, we can see them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you can see my slides because I can't see them.
No, I can't see them.
Oh, wait. Can you see them now?
Yes, I can see them now. You're good to go, Deirdre and Brendan.
Thank you, Terry. Hello, I'm Deirdre McHugh, Physical Accessibility Coordinator at the University of Galway, and this is Brendan Smith, Coordinator of the Crowd4Access Footpath Mapping Project at the Galway site of the Insight SFI Research Centre for Data Analytics. We're going to tell you about how we collaborated to engage students and staff at the University of Galway to improve campus accessibility through citizen science. I'm going to hand you over to Brendan now to tell you about Crowd4Access. Slides aren't moving.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, folks, we just have a problem here with slides.
We're having a little
moving.
technical issue with ours. Oh, here we go.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Great. Sorry about that. So smart technologies have been a powerful instrument of change in the modern era, and one that has transformed people's way of life, allowing those with different types of disabilities to enjoy full independent lives. The handheld web-connected device has enabled us to travel more easily by providing informative maps on routes, amenities, and their locations. This is especially beneficial in an increasingly urbanized planet where we live in a highly populated, very busy, and often chaotic built environment. The COVID lockdown, though, was a reality check for our fast-moving lifestyle. The need to move away from long-distance, car-centric transport infrastructure was one that gained momentum as a result of the severe restrictions imposed on personal movement. And urban dwellers began to think of more people-centric 15-minute cities. But the lockdown also exposed the shortcomings in an urban connectivity that undermined the quality of life for large sections of our populations. It shone the spotlight, for instance, on the problems that so many have in navigating their neighborhoods and the wider city. The cities of the last 100 years have been built around the needs of motorized vehicle users, and online travel maps reflect this. While streets are mapped in minute detail, features such as tactile pavement, bollards, and phone boxes on footpaths, which can impede pedestrian movement, rarely appear. Crowd4Access seeks to address this deficiency through collaborative action on mapping the accessibility of footpaths in Irish towns and cities, and making this information publicly available using free open source software. It represents a partnership between citizens and professional data science researchers to map footpath accessibility and to empower people with the information necessary to influence policymakers in order to make changes to secure accessibility for all. So Crowd for Access recognizes that all of us have or will have challenges when navigating the footpaths of an urban area. The wheelchair user and the parent pushing a buggy may need access ramps. The runner may need an even surface, whereas the blind may need tactile pavement. University staff and student volunteers meet up for a series of online workshops and on-site mapping sessions to learn about how these different peoples use footpaths in different ways and how to capture and share footpath accessibility data. This mapping is done through the use of a street-level imagery app platform that captures images which are then used to enrich free, open, edible global maps with the addition of relevant features such as footpaths, buildings, and roadways within those. Initially, though, the data collected has to be identified and tagged onto the maps manually by volunteers, a necessary process, but one that is very time-consuming. This, though, is where machine learning comes in, specifically in the form of image analysis. Using the data collected to build up a critical mass, machine learning algorithms are trained to automatically identify the different elements of footpaths, such as bollards, street trees, and the different types of pedestrian crossings. For example, by providing the algorithm with multiple images of tactile pavements, as in these images in front of you, it will eventually learn to recognize this footpath feature without human input.
We used an app called Mapillary to record photo streams of campus footpaths and uploaded these to a platform called OpenStreetMap. Working together, it took the mapping group referred to earlier just over an hour to map around 80% of campus footpaths. The group was made up of professional and academic colleagues, including our university president, Professor Kieran O'Hogarty, and crucially, some of our students and colleagues with disabilities. Once uploaded to OpenStreetMap, the photo streams appear as an overlay to the map, allowing us to use them to add in footpaths and input details such as the surface type and width. Each of the green icons on the map represents a photograph, and following the stream provides the exact location of the footpath, which can be added by drawing a line from one point to the next. We can then add value to the footpath data by clicking on the line and inputting details into the left-hand menu. For example, that the footpath highlighted here goes over a bridge. We can add details on who can use the footpath, in this case, pedestrians, wheelchair users, and cyclists. We can add points to the footpath to represent barriers, for example, a bollard or a raised curb. Mapping campus footpaths was only the start. Dr. Mike Hines, part of our original mapping group, has engaged his BA in Applied Social Sciences students to map the wider Galway city in collaboration with Crowd for Access and Dr. Lorraine Tansey and Ruth Keeley from the Alive Student Volunteering Programme. If you'd like to find out more about Crowd for Access, or better still, get involved, please visit the Crowd for Access website. Thank you very much for listening. Is Terry on mute?
Yeah. Well done. What a fantastic initiative, and well done on keeping time. I really appreciate it. And now, all audience there in Croke Park, all my online audience, can you please, if you have questions, use Slido. If you have questions for Deirdre and Brendan, use Slido, put presentation in front of them while they're in your head, get them in just now. Now, our second speaker is not able to be with us just now. So our next speaker, Amin, has said that he will go ahead. So Amin, if you're ready to go, I would appreciate it if you could do your session just now. So let me introduce Amin Sharifi Isalo. He's talking about inclusive learning management systems for students with disabilities in higher education. Amin, if you'd like to share your slides just now, that would be great.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you see my slide?
Yes. Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and listening to this presentation. My name is Amin Sharifi Salu from the Department of Sociology and Criminology at UCC. Please note that this ongoing research project is funded by Digital Humanities at UCC, and Kevin Seward from UL is currently working with me on this research project. Considering that the LMS do not fully serve the needs of those with diverse disabilities and or users from underrepresented minorities in the context of possibilities promoted under the UDL framework, this ongoing research project conducts a qualitative and quantitative study to explore the perceptions of students and educators to assess how LMS, particularly Canvas, can be used as a platform to deliver more inclusive education experiences. Students are very diverse in terms of nationality, ethnicity, communication style, cultural context, ability, educational background, and socioeconomic circumstances. Considering this diversity, this research project aims to demonstrate that UDL on LMS can offer more inclusive and accessible to all students, which in turn benefits students with disability. According to Armstrong 2011, an inclusive pedagogy refers to a classroom climate where all students feel supported intellectually and academically, and that fosters a sense of belonging among students. The question is how these principles of UDL can support the DSS registered student. A student may learn best by listening or by using visual aids, but evidence suggests most students do not have a single learning style, and in fact, learn best when exposed to a range of modalities and representation. As each performance operates a different function, it is important to understand the needs of DSS registered students to be able to support them. By applying UDL, LMS can be used to foster collaboration by promoting various ways of engaging with material, to present the course materials in a variety of ways by using multimedia, and to provide options for students to present their learning in various ways. This chart shows 134 students' responses to 5 questions of survey. The question is, how helpful are the following learning tools on Canvas or LMS? About 49% of participants found all materials uploaded on Canvas extremely and somewhat are helpful, while only 1% of participants found them extremely unhelpful and somewhat unhelpful. About 79% of participants found reading, such as articles and book chapters uploaded on Canvas, extremely and somewhat helpful, while about 1.5% of participants found them extremely unhelpful and somewhat unhelpful. About 73% of participants found short video clips uploaded on Canvas extremely and somewhat helpful, upon only 2.5% participants who found them extremely unhelpful and slightly unhelpful. Multimedia shows similar responses. I don't want to go to the details, but only 34% of participants found the discussion board on Canvas extremely helpful and somewhat helpful for learning. It should be noted that who have provided negative responses to the discussion board were in the largest cohort, about 470 students of the first year module, who usually do not get any exercise on the discussion board, but they are divided in small groups to attend workshops. Accessing Canvas is not an issue, of course, if there is a good internet connection, but rather with the way educators display information. The most common accessibility issues on Canvas are videos without caption, inaccessible documents, and inaccessible learning rules. Based on this research data gathered until now, key recommendations that might be helpful for online teaching and using LMS are all readings, videos, and slides should be uploaded on Canvas in a format that all the students can access, download, print, convert, and read them, including students with disability. Provide opportunity to students to record their voice, for example, for participation in the discussion board. Increase live captioning across all videos and slides. Improve the accessibility for all the students. Provide more choice to all the students to be able to satisfy their needs, which can indeed promote inclusive pedagogy and implement UDL principles. Thank you for listening.
And well done. That was perfect. I mean, thank you. Chucky didn't even get a chance there to intervene at all. Well done. Thank you very, very much for staying to time. An absolutely fascinating topic. The learning management system is such a huge part of the experience of students' life. And hopefully I'll have time to ask you some questions at the end about it, because I have a few. I hope our audience in person there is doing okay. We're now going to move to our last lightning talk for this session. Our last lightning talk. Hello, Viv. I hope you're ready to go. Chucky's on your case. Okay, so no talking too much. I didn't want that 10 seconds so you were over in the panel earlier on to come through again. It's good to see you both. So it's great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Vivian Rath and Barbara Waters, who are going to talk about students with disabilities on placements, guidance on the provision of reasonable accommodation on practice-based placements in professionally accredited programme. I look forward to hearing from it, and Chucky's on guard.
Thank you very much. This is a new resource that AHEAD and Dawn, supported by the HEA, have produced just before Christmas. And I want to tell you about the research and the guidance. Why did we do this research? Previously, AHEAD research has shown that disabled people are underrepresented within professional fields, such as health and welfare and education, which are professionally accredited and include mandatory practice-based placements. AHEAD and Dawn were aware of the issues that have been raised relating to the provision of reasonable accommodations for students with disabilities when on placement, and these were cited as persistent barriers to success. With support of the HEA, a research project was undertaken to identify how to overcome concerns and provide guidance based on the research, with recommendations on the implementations of the finding.
Sorry, we can't see your slides.
Oh, I'm sorry, right, geez, that's a significant aspect. Okay,
Yeah.
just go on a second. So
Sorry, I didn't let you know sooner.
No, it's okay, there's no problem, no, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, are you seeing them now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so it should be the full slideshow there.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect, there you go.
Okay.
There you go.
But fortunately, we haven't missed anything by not seeing the slides, because we are just finishing this slide, which is about the research specifically looking at entrance to courses on teaching, nursing and midwifery, health professions, and the reasonable accommodations for disabled students on these placements. Following the research, the guidance has been produced with recommendations for staff in higher education and placement providers, focusing on the student at the centre. So guidance for all areas, The principles and recommendations in the guidance can be used in a much wider range of professional courses where placements are required. The guidance also provides recommendations for the professional bodies and other statutory bodies who set the standards for the profession and links with the work of QQI moving forward. It's intended to support a range of professionals working in the areas of diversity and inclusion, quality improvement, course development and delivery, deans of schools or faculties, course leaders, preceptors and placement coordinators, disability services and access staff, and student union officers. How did we do the research? There are 3 phases in the research. Firstly, connecting with students with disabilities in higher ed and further education to hear about their experiences and how things might be done differently to ensure inclusion. Secondly, consultation workshops with staff in institutions and placement providers to hear about their experiences and concerns and discuss examples of where things were working well. Thirdly, consultation through interviews with professional bodies setting the standards. What did we find? Following this, we identified 6 key themes, in-depth reporting with recommendations. We hope you'll find this key theme presentation within the publication a helpful way of navigating your way around what's important for you in your particular situation at any one time. The 6 key themes are equality and diversity, understanding the legal framework for reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities, disclosure, creating a safe place for students to discuss their possible support needs, placement practice, delivering reasonable accommodations in a timely manner when starting a placement, culture, ensuring student feedback is collected and how it's used to shape practice, and professional bodies, understanding their equality and diversity duties and responsibilities in relation to reasonable accommodations, and mental health, understanding placement anxiety and how to support students. And here's an example of one of the findings from students and staff, and this was at the planning process for students heading on their placement and throughout their placement. Sometimes called PLENS or LENS in higher education, the process should acknowledge and include detailed content about the placement to identify where reasonable accommodations are needed. These may be different from those provided within an HEI, who will arrange the provision and ensure they are in place on day one. The 4 stages recommended are the pre-placement meeting, a preliminary meeting when the student arrives at the start, a mid-placement meeting to review how things are working and make any necessary adjustments and changes, and a final meeting to review success. These should fully include the student, and regular contact and feedback provided between the student, the HEI, the placement provider, and feedback from the student was regarded as essential. Looking at reasonable accommodations in more detail, the right to reasonable accommodations for disabled students, whether within the higher education institution or on placement, are enshrined in the Irish Equality Acts. Additionally, all public bodies in Ireland have a public sector and human rights duty to publish transparently their strategy for engaging with disabled people, and this should be available in detail within, for example, a strategic plan. Continuing professional development on disability should be regularly in place, including for senior managers, and discussed at key reviews and course design. Placement providers and HEIs should be aware of the range of reasonable accommodations that are possible on placement, including using assistive technology in the workplace, flexible working and location. HEIs should publish policies on placement arrangements, including the offer of reasonable accommodations in places accessible to students, and placement providers should have procedures in place to respond to agreed reasonable accommodations in a timely manner. I would particularly like to say here my concern on Dara's presentation that the flexibilities under COVID are being discontinued. Our research showed that they were absolutely proved that things that were impossible were possible. And it would be an expectation that a student with a disability would be able to draw down those kinds of reasonable accommodations. What happens now? You can visit us if you're on place at the stand. in Croke Park, or you can visit us at the Students with Disabilities on Placement report, which is now available. And you can email Vivian and vivian.rath@ahead.ie, or you can tweet us at Ahead Ireland. And we're very happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Ooh, just by the skin of your teeth did you get in.
I added the extra bit about Dara.
Thank you very much. What a fantastic piece of research. And I think you're right. We have to make sure that all of the wonderful things that happened during COVID are maintained as we go forward and not lost because and we go backwards.
Yeah.
Now, I'm delighted to hear you have to wait for you'll be delighted to hear you have to wait for your coffee for another few minutes because our final speaker is here. And it's Fatima, I hope I'm saying it right, Fatima Bobia from
Yes.
she's going to speak about inclusive higher education through an Algerian lens, experience of disability support staff. So can I just also remind everybody questions that you have in your head for Vivian and Barbara, for any of the other presenters, please put them in through Slido. Now, Fatima, we have Chucky is very concerned about timekeeping, so it's going to be keeping a very close eye on what's happening because we need to have time for questions afterwards. Okay, I'm delighted. Off you go, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Fatma, a PhD researcher at the University of the West of Scotland. And today I'll be talking on inclusive higher education through an Algerian lens, and specifically the efforts done by Disability Support Office in one Algerian university and the challenges that are still facing them. My presentation today is only a small part of my PhD research that sought to investigate the experiences of students with disabilities and disability support staff working with them. Well, if you look at the inclusive education and disability studies in Algeria, you can see that this is an under-researched and under-implemented topic, and still it's in its earlier stages in Algeria. So due to the increasing number of higher education students with disabilities in higher education, and specifically at this investigated university, this university has adopted a proactive approach that is entitled the Universal EMA, which stands for Inclusive Education in the Maghreb Universities, which stands for the Northern African countries in collaboration with the European universities to promote inclusion for those with disabilities and those from vulnerable groups. This led to the creation of a disability support office at the receptive university, and also training being given to the disability support office at the early 2010s. As I was interested in investigating the experiences of students and staff, I've employed a qualitative research, and through IPA methodology and analysis, this allowed me through its audiographic feature to elicit rich data and voice up the concerns of my participants. I've used semi-structured interviews with 5 disability support staff at this university and also 12 students with disabilities. But today I'm only showcasing the results and barriers, like facilitators and barriers from the standpoint of disability support staff. It was seen and it was revealed that this disability support office are making like great efforts to include those students with disabilities at these universities. And for the facilitators, they provided environmental facilitators that were restricted to facilitating physical accessibility and accessibility to the academic content. This was related to omission of steps, building ramps, allocation of ground floor classrooms and residency rooms for students with physical disabilities, and also provision of learning materials such as bright tools, dictaphones, and assessment accommodations such as provision of scribes, readers, extra time during exams, changing the settings of exams for those with mental health difficulties and those with learning difficulties as well. And for the attitudinal barriers, this was showcased through the positive attitudes that the university disability support staff and also peers without disabilities hold towards students with disabilities. However, these facilitators seem to be inconsistent and also insufficient to accommodate the needs of all students with disabilities at this university. And this was due to many barriers, mentioning environmental barriers such as lack of learning materials, and that suit all the need of different students with disabilities and different learning styles, and also environmental barriers related to inaccessibility of the infrastructure in this university, as the buildings and infrastructure are still like old-fashioned and outdated. This is related to different structural barriers within this university, and as starting from the nature of the Disability Support Office, which is only a voluntary initiative that is not receiving funds, and like being like showing reluctance from the Ministry of Higher Education and the Higher Education Authority to officialize this office, as sometimes staff are forced to pay from their own money pocket to do some necessary reconstructions and to provide help for these students and learning materials. Other structural barriers were revealed are lack of training, lack of continuous training, as they only received training in 2010, and there is no continuous training that makes them updated of the on the inclusive strategies and inclusive accommodations that needs to be done for students with disabilities. Other structural barriers mentioned for the staff which were preventing them from doing their job was also lack of collaboration between teaching staff and Disability Support Office, as the Disability Support Office sometimes negotiates support plans for students, but teachers refrain from adopting those teaching methods within their classes. And this was due to attitudinal perceptions, negative attitudinal perceptions, and conceptualization of disability and the concept of inclusion in general, which is still stemmed from the medical view and not the social view to disability and inclusion. Also, both staff and students here mentioned lack of specific inclusive policy, as they mentioned that the only inclusive legislation is at the level of the community and at the level of the national level, the Algerian state, and not specific to universities or higher education. It can be seen that staff are making like a great efforts to include those students. However, there's still much to be done. And if we can see to the Algerian context or this university specifically, we can say that there are like different contextual factors that are still influencing the experiences of both students and staff, which make me think of recommendations to provide at the level of the microsystem to the microsystem, as this is a developmental theory that emphasizes on understanding the importance of the influences that shape the experiences and preparing or deciding interventions upon hand. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and well done in time and everything. Thank you very much. Now we do have a few minutes for questions. Philip, again, can all of our participants, both online and in person, if you have questions, put them into Slido. Philip, have we got questions for any of our presenters?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions here. First question is for presentation 1. How do you plan to ensure sustainability of the Crowd4Access project, such as keeping the footpath data up to date?
So Deirdre and Brendan, a sustainability question for you.
I'm gonna let Brendan take this one, I think.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. This would have to be done something not as a once-off, but as a regular event, because even within our own university, there has been a restructuring of the footpath since we actually started. So you'd have to, that's why we work at a local level. We work with local communities who know what's happening at a local level. At a national level, we wouldn't realise what's specifically happening on the streets of Cork or Dublin or Limerick or Waterford. So it is essential that this is very much a grass-based citizen science orientated structure to allow those changes that are happening to transport infrastructure to be actually mapped. So updating happens because of the involvement of local communities who have their eye on the local situation, so to speak, you know, if that answers. So sustainability through local involvement is the only way forward for something like Crowd4Access.
but those connections, those community connections are essential for initiatives like this. This is something that we should build more of, I think.
Yes, definitely. And I think now this was a project that was started by the Insight SFI Research Centre for Data Analytics. It's their project, but how we got the university involved, I work in the Access Centre, I'd come along to a workshop and I just thought, why don't we map the campus? And it just moved from there. And that's the thing, it's a dynamic process. So Brendan's also worked with secondary schools. He's worked with various community groups to map other parts of Galway. They've done a lot of Tuam. So I suppose in our own, and the sustainability as well is through embedding it in the curriculum and making this kind of, it's a living document, and we can engage our students in that. And they can see that they have a role in using what they're learning at university to improve society. So if we can keep that going, but it all absolutely depends on the people involved and keeping the momentum going.
Yeah. So as Deirdre said, it's organic, never ending change.
Oh, that's always a challenge, but always a good one. Okay, we might just move on. Philip, have you got a question for one of the other speakers, please?
Yeah, I have 3 questions for presentation 3, Barbara and Vivian. Would additional financial supports help students on placements and internships?
That's something that we didn't exactly look at. I mean, the students are still enrolled at the university, so they will be supported till the end of their course. But certainly as employees at the placement, the reasonable accommodations are required by the employer as well. And they would be made as they would be for if you recruited a member of staff directly from outside with a disability, you would be expected to provide those supports. And there may be within the Irish system funding for employees, but I'm not so up to date on that. But they are within the current structure, they are students and they're employees.
Super. Philip, I'd like to ask a question of presentation 2, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So, I mean, one of the things I know from my experience in the National Forum that students found most difficulty with was that it's the different approaches that individual lecturers take with how they actually display their data and set up their courses within, so that they have to learn literally as many different ways of using Moodles as there are lecturers there. Have you looked at that? I mean, all of the different ways that you can present all the information, I think is very good. But I remember from the data, students were saying, can we just have a consistent approach in terms of how we use the system? Is that something that you've looked at? You need to can you unmute, I mean, please?
Muted. Yeah, thank you for unmuting. Yes, as I looked at Moodle, Canvas, and before we had Blackboard, still some universities they are using Blackboard. As I mentioned, if students they have access to those LMS, then there is no problem. If they have internet, they have access. The only problem we have is the information or documents that the educators or lecturers they have uploaded on those LMS. For example, PDF, we need to upload the original PDF that students they can use PDF, which one is a readable PDF. If we scan, for example, a book chapter, upload on Canvas or any of them, the Moodle or any of LMS, then it is something only for students who they can read, they can see, and that is problematic for other students because scanned copies of a book chapter cannot be read. Okay, I'm talking about immersive reading and reader or so on. Unfortunately, there are documents on Canvas, particularly that students they cannot, particularly students with disability, they cannot access them. Recently, just last month, something happened in UCC. I don't know in other universities they are doing the same or not, but I'm sure university we have something look like half of a clock, and that half a clock is showing the accessibility, how low and high is the accessibility of a document, and that is good for lecturers to use that sign there to understand whether the documents are accessible for the students or not. That is a very good step in education, and it is very good for the students. But again, there are a lot of work we have to do on Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, and other LMS to make everything easier for all the students. If we work on those LMS to make everything accessible for all the students, then the students with disabilities or underrepresented students, they will benefit from that too.
Great, and thank you, Eamon. I know, Philip, that there are probably more questions, but we've run out of time. What I would ask our presenters to do is if you could look at the questions in Slido and perhaps provide the answers so that they can be distributed. I really would appreciate that. Can I just advise everybody now that we're going to stop now. Our next session is going to start at 12 o'clock. So we're a little bit behind time because of our technology bits. So our next session is starting at 12 o'clock. Could I ask all our online participants just to turn their cameras off and remain unmuted? And I think they'll look after you in Croke Park, where you direct you to where the coffee is, I'm sure. And we'll see everybody back here at 12 o'clock. I look forward to it. Can I thank all our presenters and on behalf of myself and Chucky.
Thanks.